Hi everybody, and welcome to Kids Talk. Today, we're going to be learning how to win Monopoly. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Now, Monopoly can be divided into three main stages. The first is the early game, the second is the middle game, and the third is the late game. Now, the early game is the game from the beginning to when almost all of the properties have been sold out, and only a couple are left to be bought by the other players. Then, the second stage of the game is the stage in which trades happen, in which people start making monopolies. Houses and hotels start coming on the board. People start shuffling properties around and playing with each other. And finally, the third, the end game, is when all of the monopolies have been developed and the board is very difficult to be crossed. Now, let's discuss each of these strategies one by one. Now, what should you do in the early game to increase your chances of winning? Now, there are mainly two things that you can do. And the first thing is to buy. You need to buy whatever properties you land on, even if you think that you're going to trade them off later, even if you think you can't afford it, and even if it's more expensive for you. Now, why is that? And that's because this will greatly help you in the middle game and in the later game, because once you have monopolies, then you can mortgage those properties to get more money. And once you have more money, you can develop more properties into houses and hotels, which will help you get a lead in the game. And the second thing you can do is to get out of jail as quickly as you can. Now, if by any means possible, buy, let's say, a chance card or a community chest card, or even by the go to jail space, if you end up in jail, the first thing you need to do is pay $50 and get out of jail. Don't wait 3 turns or don't wait to roll doubles, because you need to start buying ASAP. Once all the properties are gone, they're gone. You can't do anything about it. Now, you may be wondering, well, which properties should we consider buying? Which properties are good and which properties are not good? And well, the answer to that question is the answer to two more questions. The first question is, well, which spot is the most landed on? And the second, and the one that players most commonly forget about, is dice probabilities. Which numbers are the most commonly rolled on dice? And well, for a pair of two normal dice, the most commonly rolled numbers are 7, 6, and 5, with 7 being the most rolled number, and its probability of showing up on the dice is 6 out of 36 outcomes. That's 1/6, or a nearly 16% chance of that number showing alone. And if you consider the top two numbers, 7, 6, and 5, there's a 44% chance of you rolling these three numbers alone. And if we consider about the range 5 to 9, that is the numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, then there's a staggering 2 in 3 chance that you will roll one of these numbers in your games. Now, what is the most commonly landed on spot? And well, it's not something that you may think of normally. It's not a property, it's not a utility, it's not even a railroad. It's actually a jail. Now, how is that? Because there are many ways to go to jail. First is drawing chance cards, the second is drawing community chest cards, the third is a whole space dedicated to sending you to jail, and the fourth is the speeding rule, rolling 3 doubles in a row and going straight to jail. So, with so many options of people going to jail, it's safe to say that jail is the most commonly landed on spot. Now, the answer to the question, what property should you consider buying, is simple. Which space falls within the 5 to 9 range from jail? You guessed it right, the orange properties. New York Avenue, Tennessee Avenue, and St. James Place. And which properties are 7 spots away from orange properties? You guessed it right, the red properties. Illinois Avenue, Kentucky Avenue, and Indiana Avenue. These spots are the prime spots that you need to buy, capitalize on, and develop. One more reason of buying the orange properties is the chance card that says go back 3 spaces. Now, there are only 3 chance spaces on the board, and the first one sends you back to the income tax space. The third one sends you back to the community chest space. But the second one, that returns you back to New York Avenue, which is an orange property. Now, what can you do with the railroads and the utilities? Well, the utilities aren't as great if you only have one of them because the rent is 4 times the number rolled on dice, which is a maximum of $50, which is not that great if you ask me. But if you have both the properties and by chance the person comes to your property from a very long distance, then that can make $100, which is okay enough. But the 4 railroads, if you own all 4 of them, then you would get $200 if someone lands on them in any case, which is really good as there are 4 railroads out of the 40 spaces on the board, which is a 10%. That's a pretty high chance of someone landing there. So the next time you play Monopoly, you know that you need to get the orange properties, the red properties, the utilities, and all the railroads. Also, when buying properties, you can use auctions to your advantage. You can drive the price of a property really high such that it becomes double or triple of the cost price, and you can also make it so cheap that you get a property that's listed for $200 at, let's say, $50 if no one has the money. One more ploy that you can put in use in the early game when you are getting properties is to not ask rent when people land on them. Now, you may be yelling at me now and telling me you need people on your property to get rent, but that's not correct, my friend. If you forget to ask anyone for rent on the early games, then they'll develop a soft corner for you. And in the later games, if you're caught on their properties, then you can say that they'll most likely forgive the rent as well. Now, the rulebook explicitly says that if the owner doesn't ask for rent on time before the next player rolls, then they don't have to pay you rent. And no one in their right minds, when offered to pay you rent. Now, that is it for the early game, but what should you do to increase your chances of winning in the middle game? Now, the middle game is all about trading, and you need to disguise your trades to make it look good for your opponent in spite of it being bad. Now, how are you going to do that? Let's take an example. Let's say you have 2 orange properties, 1 light blue property, and 1 pink property, $600 with you. Let's suppose your opponent has, in contrast, 1 orange property, 2 pink properties, and 2 blue properties, also having $600 with him. Now, you could offer him one trade, and that being of trading your pink and light blue property for your opponent's orange and $400. At first, this offer seems ludicrous, and your fellow people are gonna laugh at you for making such a stupid offer. But once you show them what you've actually done, then they are going to be stunned. Now, what has this actually done? After the trade, you have the orange monopoly plus $1,000. On the other hand, your opponent has the light blue monopoly and the pink monopoly, which agreed they are very close to each other and very high risk of people landing on them, but he only has $200 now. And you having one monopoly, which is in a prime spot, and also having $1,000 with you, which is, by the way, enough to build at least, let's say, 3 houses on each of the properties, is much beneficial than your opponent having 2 monopolies side by side, both of them having low rent levels and not having any money to develop any properties, only having $200. This is why this trade is a really good trade for you. Now, you may be wondering, Well, what about houses and hotels? What is the best time to put houses and hotels on your monopolies, and how much should you put if you're going to put them? Well, now the first question, when to put it, that's simple. If you see your opponents approaching you at a 5 to 9 range within your properties, that's a really good time to put your properties because there's a 2 by 3 chance, as you've discussed earlier, of them landing on it. And how many houses should you put now? You may be wondering, well, it's just best to put one hotel on each property, right? That's going to do it all. But that's not always the case. You see, how many houses and hotels does the game come with? 32 houses and 12 hotels. You cannot exceed that. So instead of converting 4 houses to hotels and giving those 4 hotels back to the bank so that people can purchase them, why not to create a housing supply? Let's say you have 2 monopolies of 33 properties. That's 6 properties. If you put 4 houses on each of them, then you alone are occupying 24 houses out of the 32. That would leave only 8 houses available to all other players. Now, what would this do? This would result in bidding of the houses, and the houses which were available at $150 or $200 before would now go up to $300 or maybe even $400, which is going to be a really good thing for you, but a really bad thing for your opponents. The second thing is, how many houses should you put? Well, if you can build up to 4 houses, that's great. But initially, target 3 houses. Because if you see on any title lead card, the jump from 2 houses to 3 houses is massive as compared to 3 houses to 4 houses or 4 houses to 1 hotel. You should place a hotel in the later part of the game when most of the people have been drained off of their money and you have an ample amount of money to convert your houses to hotels. Because in the later game, when people don't have that much money, then they can't afford to convert their houses to hotels. One thing that you should always keep in mind is that you should at any time have that much liquid money so that you can survive the highest point on the board. For example, if you have 2 railroads, 1 green property, and $300, and your opponent has hotels on his likely properties, plus you're 7 spots away from those properties, then it is a very bad idea to develop your properties then, because if by mistake you land on them, then you're not going to be able to survive the blow. But on the other hand, if you have 2 railroads, 1 green property, and $500 instead of $300, now you could consider building and developing. Because if you develop the right way, one step at a time, then you still have money if in case you just have a bad blow. One thing that you should always keep in mind is that you should at any time have that much liquid money so that you can survive the highest point on the board. For example, let's say your opponents have hotels on the light blue properties. The rent there is about $600. You, at all times, should have $600 in cash with you so that you can survive a blow. Whether you're buying properties, mortgaging them, unmortgaging them, placing down buildings, houses, hotels, or performing any action, because the vehicles of the game are the dice, and they do not always accompany you. One bad rule, and you can leave the game, because if you land on that property and you don't have $600, even if you have $550, you would have to mortgage one of your properties, and also it comes with a great loss, as you'll have to pay back 10% of the cost. Now, once or twice is okay, but if you're doing this frequently, then stop doing this, as this will lead you to lose a lot of games. It's pretty obvious that you'll have to take a lot of your decisions on your own without me explaining them. For example, what should you do if you are 7 spots away from your opponent's properties, and if your opponent is 7 spots away from your properties? Well, the rule that I discussed before here applies. You still need as much liquid cash as possible to pay off the highest rent. And if the highest rent was, let's say, the pink properties, in which the maximum rent would be around $700 or $800, then you would need to keep that much cash with you, as one blow, as I mentioned before, could destroy everything. And really, it's up to chance here. There's also a chance that your opponent don't land on your properties, but you do on them. Lastly, let's discuss the end game. What should you do in the end game to increase your chances of winning? Well, most of the strategies that we have discussed in the middle game apply here as well, except for some. And the one that is really crucial is to stay in jail in the late game. Now, you might be yelling at me, telling me that jail is not a good place to be, even in Monopoly. And well, yeah, for the early game that's true, but for the late game you can use it as a haven. You can actually stay in there, not pay the $50, and hope that you don't get doubles. If you do, then that's up to luck, but try not to. Because it's better than stepping out. Because if you step out, you'll have to pay rent to other players. And nowhere in the rulebook does it mention that you can't collect rent if you're in jail. Well, when you're in jail, you don't have to move around the board and you can get 3 turns of rents for people for free, and you don't have to pay those rents to other people and any costs. So it's really good. Now, some of the other strategies, alliances and deals. Now, I've taught you one example of how you can disguise bad trades for your opponents so that they look like good ones, but what are some other strategies? Well, one example is that if you see a trade between 2 people, which in your opinion is not advantageous to you, but it would benefit the other players, then you can try to convince the other players to not do the trade. You could go to one player and tell him, don't do this trade, he's gonna backstab you later. Or if it doesn't work, you can try something else, but stop the trade. And these type of social strategies will really help you. Okay, so those were some OP strategies that would help you to win Monopoly every time. And as I always say, like, share, subscribe, and I'm going to be seeing you in my next video. Till then, take care and bye-bye!